to talk about an audit. See, I didn't even bring that up. All right. Ms. Durkee, if you want to move on to item 6, please.
Sure, and I'm going to let Ms. Newby take this from here. I will say it's always great to get a clean audit back, and so we have a visitor here that you've seen before that's going to share a little bit. If you want to come, just wherever you want to be is good. I think we have a microphone. If you would like to use that, that would be good.
There's one over here.
Okay. Does it work?
Hello.
There you go. Fantastic. So I'm just going to let you take it away if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
All right.
You know, I'm a little offended that all the fun stuff's not over yet. Right? Let's say my name's Jeff Hewitt with Bledsoe Hewitt and Gullickson. I do recognize several of you. I think I've been here several times with you guys, and so it's always a pleasure to go over this audit report with you. And I guess since this is on YouTube, I could consider myself a YouTuber. Is that right? Yeah. Right. That's what I always wanted. My kids will love it. That's right. Well, I'll also just kind of briefly go over this on page 5 is where I'll kind of start. You guys are probably familiar, maybe you had a chance to look at it before the meeting, so I'll be kind of brief, even though I had a request to speak for a couple hours, to really go detailed, but I think I'll scale it down to a couple minutes maybe. But there on page 5 is the independent auditor's report. It's the basic the opinion letter. Got the report on the audit of financial statements. There's the qualified opinion paragraph, adverse opinion paragraph, and the reasons for those particular paragraphs. And like in the past, the district prepares its financial statements on a regulatory basis as prescribed by the State Department of Education. And it does not include a general fixed asset account group, which is a column on the balance sheet that would show the value for your land, buildings, appreciation, et cetera. And that's why it's qualified on the regulatory basis. And since it's prepared on a regulatory basis, that's why it has this adverse opinion on generally accepted accounting principles, because it doesn't state fairly under those standards. This is something that's about 95%, I would say, of the districts in the state of Oklahoma have similar qualifications, so it's not really specific, just to your district. And I think you've seen it on there in the past. It's been a little different format. This letter is a little different, but pretty much the same. Do you have any questions about that? Comments? Well, in the next couple reports, pages 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, I think goes through 12. These two reports on internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations. The second report is more specific to the federal programs and the compliance and internal controls there. Had there been anything that we consider to be a significant deficiency or a material weakness, it would have appeared on this report. And we didn't find anything that rose to that level. There was only one item I think we had in the management letter, which should be the very last page or two that's in your, did you get the bound? You get the bound copies, did you not? Or even on the PDF, it's probably, if you had a PDF, it's the last couple pages. But the only one item was with the building fund, the reserved encumbrances. They were overstated at the end of the year. And so that's something that you want to make sure that there in May, probably June, that you go through all the purchase orders that are still open and, make sure you kind of pare those down to what they actually are, or therefore the fund balance will be more accurate at June 30th at the end of the year. Any questions with that? So there's other things we might have came across when we were here, but they're probably just communicated orally as, best practices overall. I think it's done well. Staff was good. Christy is always helpful, and even the staff was always helpful whenever we need something or have questions. And one thing you really did good is with the construction you did last year that considered the Davis-Bacon Act with the federal funding. Had all the documentation for that, which is great. There's a lot of schools that weren't as good, I should say. So it's good that you were on top of that. It's just a matter of being, I guess, progressive in what you're getting ready to do, making sure you have all your things in place, which is what you should, before you actually go through those projects with the federal money. So that was good. I'll flip then over just to page 15, which is kind of the financial section. Briefly, this page 15 is basically the balance sheet. It's called the statement of assets and liabilities and your fund balance. The general fund column and then your special revenue column is combined building, Naked Co-op, and child nutrition. your debt service, your sinking fund. Capital projects are all your bond funds combined. And then you have the expendable trust and agency funds, which are activity funds. And also there's the, I think the gift fund in there as well. And then you see this general long-term debt account group, which shows the capital leases and the bonds that are payable at June 30, 23. And that account group, the fixed asset, is where that would appear on there if we had that information. So then the next page is basically your income statement or balance sheet, or profit and loss for those same classifications or columns. So you can see your general fund column, an excess of revenue over the expenditures of about $1 million. So your fund balance increased from the 5.5, I was 5.6, I have my glasses on, up to 6.6 there at June 30, 23. So that's always good, positive cash flow. And that fund balance accounts for about 15% of your total revenue. So that's also, good as well. They don't have the penalty in place for this year. I think maybe even this year they might not even have it in place again, but I don't think you're in any situation of having to worry about that. Then again, the special revenue is combined, building, child nutrition, the co-op. And of course, your debt service, your sinking fund shows the payments that were made, and then your capital projects as well. Any questions with those couple pages? Y'all still awake, right? It's time to get into the fun stuff. So the next couple pages are also income statement type schedules. They just have a budget and actual and a prior year comparison. And then after that comes the notes to the financials, which I'm not going to go through all those with you. It's pretty general information. If you want to skip past those on page 40, looks like 39 and 40, if you're interested to see the building fund, co-op, and child nutrition fund separately, that's the pages they are on. 39 is the balance sheet, and then 40 is the income statement. And then similarly, after those pages are the bond funds separately, pages 42 and then 43. And after that is a couple pages after that, if you're interested in an activity fund schedule, pages 46, I think 47, 48. It just shows each activity fund, the revenue and expenditures for each sub-account for the year. And the last little page on pages 49 and 50, they're very similar schedules. Page 49 is the actual schedule of expenditures of the federal awards. It's the one that the federal government likes to see. And on page 50, it's pretty much the same schedule, but it's the one the State Department prefers to see. It just has a little more information about each program. And that about brings me to the end, unless somebody has any questions about anything. Overall is good.
Do we submit these audit report to the State Department of Education?
Yes,
Okay.
they're to the state auditor's office. Also, they're filed there as well. We file that for you to the state auditors.
How many audits do you guys do? How many school districts, just approximately?
About 150 here across the state. Go from some really small into some of the larger ones, you guys included.
And we fit in very well with those groups. The things that you do for us, you do for everybody, and we're pretty typical, I guess is what my question is.
Yeah, I think I would probably say you're probably a little above average. I think, you do always have here, a little good staff and, just stay on top of things. And so it's always good. Trying to do the right thing. I guess that's how I best maybe describe it. That, and if you have a question, Christy will call or somebody in the staff will call if you have a question. So I think those are good things to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing, 'cause Claudia and I made eye contact, because when he was talking about compliances with federal dollars regarding construction projects that we used ESSER money for, the prevailing wage form was something that was kind of new to everyone the last couple of years, and had a little stress about it, but you just have to give kudos to Claudia Smith, because she made sure we were in compliance, all of those were collected, and she did a really great job. So I need to say that about Claudia publicly. Good
Yeah.
job.
Absolutely. That's what I was kind of referring to. I mean, it was nice to see the information that she had and it was organized, so it was good.
Is that
That's it. I thank you
conclude?
very much. I
Unless
think
you
you got
guys
the
have
audit
questions.
acknowledgement to sign and get back to us. And
I did want to say thank you very much to you and your crew. You did a
Well-
great job, and we appreciate all the help that you give us
Well,
throughout the year.
thank you. We appreciate you guys. And
Jeff, how many years have you been working with Sand Springs? Do you know?
well, it's been a while. Back when Lloyd was still here. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how long has that been? So whenever he was here, I think we came about a year or two after him. So it's been there that long.
Been a long time.
20 years, maybe?
And I've been doing it for 33 now, so not all Sand Springs, but this kind of work. So I'm ready to retire.
No.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
You have a
Any
good
other
evening.
questions for Jeff?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
If you do later, you know how to get a hold of me, right?
All right, we'll move on to item 7, please.
Do we need to
Do we need
take
to
a vote to?
vote to
accept?
approve, accept the audit? Yes. So we
Make a
need
motion.
a motion. Yes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call for a vote, please.
Mullins,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
Hanlon. Aye. Noggle.
Aye. Now we'll move on to 7.
Item number 7 is one of my favorite things in the world to report on. We received our district data profile report back for our special education department. I say this every time I feel like we get a report back that completes an audit, but we were found at low risk. Those are small words that have big meaning, and I know Ms. Slayhuber's here tonight, and she was so proud of it. She had it on the cabinet agenda last week and said, this is one of the first years we've had no risk, which means we needed no SDE support at all, which means they're doing a really good job. So proud of the special education department. If you have any questions, she's more than happy to answer any of those. But sometimes you just see no risk or low risk, and it feels like it's pretty simplistic, but nothing in special education is simplistic. So questions for Carrie?
I just didn't understand all these scores. Can you just give us real brief description of what those scores mean?
So the way that it works is the state is looking at 16 different indicators through IDEA, which is the federal regulation for special education. And so of those 16, a few of them are very specific to test measures. So like, do we have discrepancy? Like, are we over identifying students by race or by ethnicity? Are we suspending too much based on those different demographics? Are we doing our evaluations on time? Are we evaluating our early childhood students appropriately? And those were all the things that we met our target score and got like 100% rating on all of those things. So that was indicator 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And then the other area is really looking at results of things that we have done. So indicator 1 is about students on an IEP if they graduated. Our district number there was at 75.4%, which was actually the only area where we didn't meet the actual target. They're wanting you to have that a little bit higher. I think off the top of my head, it's maybe 80-ish is what they're looking at. One of the things that we always have to take into consideration there is with a residential facility in Sand Springs, often students will leave us from the facility and we don't ever find out where they ended up. So if somebody, for example, leaves the Tulsa Boys Home and maybe they do end up somewhere at another school, but we don't ever get a records request or we don't ever find out that they re-enrolled anywhere or that they finished somewhere out of state, that's considered a dropout. So we try really hard, and our team at Tulsa Boys Home works really diligently to try to track them down, but often sometimes we just can't find out where that next step was. But our number is still in a good spot. And, you know, the state is obviously looking at graduation and they don't take into account like maybe a student left us and they went to Job Corps and they got their GED and now they're working in a field, but that still counts as a dropout. And so that number we want to be higher, and we're always working on that and getting it higher. But the indicator I'm really, really proud about is the indicator 3B, which is about students on IEPs who were proficient on the regular ed exam. And we talked about this a little bit during the bond meeting, but for the last 2 years, that is one of the indicators that we did have to show compliance measures on for the state. So we were considered like a tier 2 or a level 2 risk. And so we had to do a lot of professional development and some really focused development on, are we doing what we need to be doing to make sure that those students are meeting those goals? And so the fact that we came off of the list for that makes me really, really proud of our teams. We took a really deep dive into the data to say, okay, look, if we look at this particular subgroup of students and have them really focus on these 5 reading skills or these 5 math skills, we can really get their test scores up. And then also, I want to shout out our middle school team because they have worked really hard to implement a lot of co-teaching. So a lot of our special ed students are now in a general ed class where there's a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher both in there providing instruction. Because what was happening is if your students are going to a special ed class for reading and math, then they're missing all of the grade level instruction. And then they're being tested on the grade level instruction. And so that is an initiative that our middle school started a few years ago, and now we've trickled it all the way up to 12th grade. But I think now that we're starting to see data 2, 3, 4 years down the road, that's why those scores are going up. So that's a lot to say that I didn't really necessarily talk about each individual percentage. But I did go back and I was able to go back as far as 2016, and this is only the second year since 2016 that we weren't at least level 2 or level 3. And so I thought it was a pretty great reflection of our team because they're willing to just do whatever they have to do to make sure that our special ed students are making gains.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And what I heard you say very clearly is that the data is important, but it's the individual kids is what we're looking for, and that we're taking care of kids. And because we're taking care of kids, that makes the data be appropriate with what we have to turn into the people at the state. So thank you for that. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So if you're ready to move on, one of the things that we get to do around Thanksgiving is help the SSEF deliver grants to teachers. And proudly, they delivered almost $80,000 worth of grants to all of our sites this year, which is a big achievement. They were kind of bragging. I think Owasso had a story that same day about their foundation delivering not quite 80,000, and we kind of edged them by a little bit. But those guys work really hard, raising money, going through committee, making sure that they're vetting all grants that the teachers write, and they were pretty proud of that number. So that was a lot of fun. iExcel is our intervention program. I felt the need to mention that because we did spend a lot of time talking through at Dialogue about testing and what we're facing in regard to just kind of these things that we're having to achieve, not just in special ed, but across the board with our gen ed students as well. And our intervention team, along with our leadership team, continues to support. iExcel is our intervention progress monitoring tool, and they're doing a really great job. You were presented some of that information, I think, in October. We'll be reassessing in January for mid-year benchmark, and again, you'll see an update of those reports, and that's where we want to look at district-wide growth for sure, but really drilling down to the individual kiddo. And then lastly, I want to commend Ms. Hobson and Mr. Neely. Those are two of our administrators that are fairly new. They're both in their second year, and we stuck them right in Leadership Sand Springs. So they're going through that year-long process, getting to know our community a little bit better. Both of them chose to move to Sand Springs from their previous community, which is a big deal when you have administrators come in and choose to buy a house and invest in our community. And so just wanted to initiate them into getting to know some people, some leaders in the community to be one of them. So I'm proud of them. It's a process and quite a commitment. So any questions? Okay. if you are ready, we can go right into item number 8.
Sure.
With finance. Jackie Wagner was the first to notice that Vernon Florence newsletter wasn't on the agenda tonight. We didn't get one this month, and I have no idea why. So she missed it, I missed it too. We, as you saw with the audit, are doing really well financially. We continue to make sure that we're watching our P's and Q's and taking care of the public money. We are looking at midterm adjustment. It's going to be a little bit different this year. COSA usually comes out with a pretty accurate prediction of the rise or fall of state aid. This year, it's been a little bit quirky, mostly because some of the weights changed per the legislative season last year. And so, and the other thing that happened is Oklahoma piloted a direct certification program for free and reduced lunches, which means that we had more kids in the state qualify. So it kind of not messed up the weights, but changed the weights to the extent that we're not really have a lot of clarity about what our mid-year is going to be, but we'll find that out in January. And of course, at that point, you'll see a budget revision likely in February that Ms. Newby will complete. This building, first floor, is pretty close to completion. Jeannie Kavach and Dick Watts did a punch list on the first floor. They're particularly looking at the Employee Wellness Center, which is the basement level. It's pretty close to completion as well, and hoping by spring break, we have all the equipment in that facility, and we can really open it up to all of our staff to use for fitness. Very proud of that. Thank you, Ms. Snoovy, for her grant that she wrote for the Tobacco Endowment Fund. And we're hoping to schedule a ribbon cutting pretty quickly. And then lastly, just so you know, the lighting upgrade at Charles Page High School cafeteria has been completed. We were able to install new lights that have a dimmer switch on them, so you can get the full effect of needing it to be bright in the cafeteria when it's necessary, but also be able to dim when that's, kind of the goal for lunchtime or whatever. So that's finished. That's good.
Well, the locks work in the new building.
The locks do work in the new building. I think you called it Fort Knox, is what I heard
Can't
today.
get in.
Listen,
No.
yeah.
I
he
went
showed
through like
up
3 security people to get in the freaking building. Just to get to Beth.
Yeah. We have to protect Beth.
Imagine what it's like to try to get to Sherry.
Well, you remember we had that threat
Bodyguard.
last year, and so we started implementing that strategy. I will say, the city does the same thing. So when you walk in the city, you have to go through Fort Knox as well. So it does make everybody here feel pretty safe. But he was working pretty hard to find Beth Shope today. That's for sure. Okay, and then number 9, if you're ready to
Yes, ma'am.
move on. Community involvement. You guys, dialogue went well tonight. It was mostly family here. We had 2 of our committee members that have been really committed to making sure they're here to help understand what we're asking. They asked some great questions tonight, I thought, and I think we'll do a great job conveying what our goals and our mission is to the community when we do vote for the bond, our student investment plan, February 13th. So that's coming up. I have scheduled several places to speak. I know people are going to get really sick of how much we put out on social media and how much we talk about the bond, but this really is important for the progress of our kids. Our community has been amazing in the past to make sure that kids have what they need. We don't want to be status quo in Sand Springs. We want to be ahead of the game, and that's what we're asking our community to do without an increase in property taxes. So it's really a win-win for everyone. But I'm speaking at Chamber Forum, the local church network, the Retired Teachers Association, the Alumni Association, and then some staff meetings, and Rotary. I got that on the books too. So it's going to be a busy January. We're kind of taking a break with Christmas break coming, but I'm hitting the pavement running January 2nd when we come back to school. So I feel like people are open. I've heard really great comments, great questions, and so, we're on the road, I think, for a successful plan. So questions about community engagement. Okay, and then lastly, in my report is the health and safety related issues. We had a little incident. I think I expressed that in an email to all of you at the Union Jinx game Friday night. We had a little mishap with one of our, not our patrons, but one of our visiting patrons that ran over a cable a stabilization cable that went to one of our electric lines and blew some fuses. So pretty big splash, and we had pretty much the entire Charles Page High School electric was out the next day, plus the internet. So Mike was pretty quick to get on that and get that all back up and running. We have been struggling with our lighting around the high school. We're on the road to recovery on that one as well. There's still a few that's out, but getting it fixed. I think there were some timer issues and some parts that needed to be replaced. Mike, you want to give a brief on where we're at? So need that lit up. So that's something that we want to, be careful with. Safety committee will meet December 7th, which is later this week. Topics on the agenda, just site safety, Stronger Connections grant progress, procedures for active shooter, of course, that's covered a lot. Crisis preparedness and our response guide. Of course, required drills for the spring semester, and then stop at app reminders that we have through OSIG. And then I guess the big news, honestly, with health and safety is the TSETA grant award of $60,000 that Ms. Newby wrote that will provide dollars to purchase equipment for our employee wellness center. So we were interviewed by Channel 6. I say we very loosely. I saw Christy. I didn't see myself, thank goodness. She did a great job. But before that went out, we sent in all staff to kind of announce to our folks that that would be coming soon. So I think people are really excited about it. Going to be handing out some gold fobs for those that want to sign kind of a, this is what I agree to do. I'm going to take care of the facility kind of stuff. And they'll be able to come at their whim to work out. So just promoting health and wellness with our staff members. So that is it, unless you guys have questions. Okay, it's a couple things. Item number 14, you all know or are aware that anytime there is a budget revision for an activity fund, those show up on the board agenda. So there is a new one for Pratt. They had a revision this month, so need to bring that to your attention. Item number 20, I want to make mention of this. When the National School Board Association does a symposium in Washington, D.C., to advocate on the national level, it's similar to what I do with AASA sitting on the governing board. Mr. Mullins, sits on the OSSBA governing board and does a great job representing Sand Springs, but also has been willing to travel to DC to spend some time in our representative's office there, doing what we do, and that's being a voice for public ed. So I'm really proud of that. It was fun going in July. We'll end up going again next July. They just need to hear the public school voice and understand what we do and why it's important to continue to support that. So proud of that. Let's see. Anybody going? Item B, that would be Mike Mullins. Yeah, and OSSBA is paying for a portion of that trip to Washington, D.C., and so he's taken off the 27th.
So that's done twice a year in two different places?
Well, the OSSBA does it once a year, and then AASA, which is that governing board that I sit on, does that in July. So twice a year, Oklahoma gets to represent the school districts here. And it really is a public school initiative. We have lots of options in Oklahoma, but it really is important for us to be promoting what we do for public ed. We serve over 90% of our kids in public schools. And so since they are, the biggest percentage of the kids in Oklahoma, it's really important that we advocate for them, for their well-being.
No, Mike, we appreciate you going and doing that for us.
Absolutely.
Takes a lot of time out of your schedule to go do that. Sure.
It's good. Item number 24 is that darn capacity report that we have to have on the agenda every quarter by law. I had a question about our total capacity, and when we summed that column that I believe it wasn't on the notes, but our capacity is 5,064, I believe, in total. One thing to remember is even though we set the capacity at that level, that does not necessarily mean that we aren't over capacity in some areas. Because remember, Once we accept those transfers, if we have move-in students to our district, obviously, we have to serve our residents. And so there are occasions where we would be over capacity in some instances because we've already accepted transfers. So Carrie, would you say that's a fair representation of why that could be the case?
On the capacity report, Tulsa Boys Home and Page Academy are not accounted for in those numbers either, because you don't make a transfer into either of those places. Like, you would transfer in as a Charles Page student, and then if you wanted to go to Page, that's an application process. So those numbers aren't in there. But also, when you're looking at the capacity report on the district website, anywhere, say Angus third grade says 66 spots available and there are 0, or 66 spots and there are 0 available, there could still be 70 students in that grade level at that school. But 66 was our cutoff because when we were making our capacity numbers, when the state said that we had to post this and show it on our website, we set that so for pre-K through third grade, we set that as if each class was 22 students per class, fourth and fifth, 24 students per class, and then middle school was 28 and high school was 30. And so when you're looking at the number of capacity, that's what that number is based off of. And then, for example, if a grade level somewhere hits above that where we're higher than we should be, like Ms. Durkee just approved a new third grade position at Garfield, that's because they had gotten to the point that they needed a fourth third grade class there. And so that'll be reflected in a change in January. Their number will go up from 66 to 88.
I would be in the camp as long as we have physical space at our schools to accept the transfers, as long as we can find teachers.
Right.
Interestingly, we had a student teacher that finished her student teaching at Northwoods, and we hired, she's coming on board in January. So it's a trick because there is really a teacher shortage out there. And so that's the other nuance you have to be careful with. And it's a little tough because we start accepting transfers July 1 based on the capacity that we have at the time. But then enrollment happens in August, and it's very likely to get residents that move in, and that throws your capacity off or over as soon as school starts. So that's really kind of a predicament, I think, and a little bit tricky to navigate sometimes.
So we're like, okay with teachers, right? I mean, we're fully.
Absolutely, we're full.
So is that something that we're promoting out there that, hey, look, we have got all the teachers and we can, we have great,
I will.
we have great teachers.
Yeah, I say that every chance I get without gloating. I mean, I really try hard not to brag about it, but honestly, there was an article, I want to say Oklahoma Watch, but I could be wrong about that. But they had looked at the postings on websites, and I believe, I hate to quote numbers, but Tulsa had a lot. Our neighbors had quite a bit.
Right.
And they said we had 2, and we don't have 2. We have 2 special education positions posted, but remember they're backfilled with retired teachers. So while we keep them posted, because we're always looking for special ed teachers, that does not mean that we have openings. So, I mean, I kind of ate my pride a little bit, but the truth is we are full. Kristen?
We actually have 1.
We have 1. Well, it was a new one, though. So,
Superintendent position?
no,
Oh,
Mr. Noggle, I think not. So that is something to be proud of. You do make a good point, though, about making sure people know.
I wonder if there's a way to figure out a percentage of our student body or transfers in from other places compared to other school districts in our vicinity, what theirs are, and just, I'd be curious.
We can definitely figure our percentage.
Yeah, we could figure ours. I
Yeah.
don't know that I'd be able to pull that data for anybody else. I can pull
Right.
ours from our SIS. But, you have, you also have places like Jinx and Bigsby are perfect examples. They are just flat, they don't accept a transfer.
Right.
And so that, their Jinx is landlocked, their buildings are as big as they're gonna be, those
Right.
kind of things. But I would say that we are probably, we accept a pretty high percentage of students. And I'm really proud of that because then we take them on as our own. And I would say, well, I don't even want to give you a number off the top of my head, but I can get one to you.
No, I
Of
was
what
just
our
curious
percentage
because,
is.
I mean, to me, that's like a pat on the back for if you have kids from other districts or parents that have kids from other districts are wanting to come into the Sand Springs district because of what we have to offer and who we have to teach their children, so
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's
It's a balance because we want to make sure we're serving our own kids well. And so again, it's that capacity for having the teachers that are qualified. Kristen, do you know, I'm asking my people off the top of their head, so I don't want to glean this, but we have 0 adjunct right now, teachers. Zero. That is resounding, which means that we haven't, I'm not saying adjuncts are bad or good. That's not a judgment. What I'm saying is we have the ability to have certified teaching staff here or the ability to emergency cert, which is that pathway to full certification. So again, I'm proud of that. They did a full national story a couple of years ago. And I don't know if you remember, but Heather Miller and Sherry Baker were interviewed and it hit national news. I just think we try to treat people right.
well, I mean, I think the teachers that we get are a direct correlation to what other teachers are saying about our district
Sure.
in, in the community, and then it just goes up from there, site leaders.
Yeah.
And then administration, and of course the superintendent in there, it all goes up and it all trickles down.
Right, for
So I
sure.
think it's just great.
People out there.
And it has to be board approved, so you guys would have to approve an adjunct that we would recommend based on their ability to teach whatever that subject matter is. But she's right, it would be possible to have a high school diplomaed person teaching a class in biology or whatever we would
Anywhere
deem.
except early
Yeah,
childhood.
right. Correct, and we just don't do that, we haven't had to do that. So I'm proud of that. It is something to talk about.
Thank you.
And then item number 25, I've sent you previous information. There was a question about Tanglewood School. It's a piece of property that's out west of town on Wakaiwa Road. It used to be an elementary school years ago. The owner, there was a problem with the legal description, and they were asking for a quiet title, meaning that we had no ties to that property. I think Gary Watts went on a kind of a fact-finding mission with Ms. Wagden, and of course Jeannie Kavach is pretty keen on descriptions, but that was one that Riggs Abney helped us ferret out. They actually worked on that years ago, so we solicited their help, and they were able to show that we had no ties to the property. So basically, I had to sign that in and of itself, but I wanted it on the consent agenda because later on, if Tanglewood comes up, I wanted somebody to be able to search that in board notes and get the full picture of what happened. So that's in consent. It's taken care of, but I wanted it to be on record.
Sure. Do I have any more questions about consent agenda? I'll entertain a motion that we accept the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call for a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Move on to the action items. Item 26, do I hear a motion we move into executive session to discuss the temporary teacher employment recommendations? Seeing none, I'll move on to item 27. I'll entertain a motion that we approve temporary teacher employment recommendations.
I'll make the motion to approve the Approval of temporary teacher employment recommendations for the 23-24 school year.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Ricky, nice job. The secondary instructional coach, what a find. Thank you for doing that.
Simple, I wouldn't think, I mean, honestly, our team, but it was an application. We post, they apply, and they fell in love with her, so I'm, Stan's of course not here, but our high school team actually did the interview, and it's amazing the talent we attract, so we're all pretty impressed with her.
Awesome. A call for a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item 28, proposed executive session to discuss employment recommendations for the 23-24 school year. None? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 29.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve the employment recommendations for the 23-24 school year as listed.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Anybody want to discuss that one? No? Seeing none? Call for a vote, please.
Mullins.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Hanlon.
Aye.
Noggle.
Aye. Do I see any matter not known about of which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the posting of this meeting?
There is not.
Only thing I want to say is, Mr. Noggle, thank you for making an application to run for or renewed your seat. Thank you for doing that today. I appreciate you doing that.
I must have been walking in my sleep. Thank you.
It is
You're welcome.
I would add to, it is a commitment, and it's one that none of you take lightly, and it's what makes the backbone of this district be as stellar as it is. So that's commendable for all of you. You don't get paid to do it. You just use your time and your energy and your focus to do the right thing for kids. So again, thank you for.
Well, yeah, and I'm just going to reiterate that, you know, it was a no-brainer to want to be on this board again because I said it, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it tomorrow and the next day and every day forward, that I think we have the best board in the state of Oklahoma. I mean, we have best school district, best superintendent, the best support staff, and bus drivers, and custodians, and cafeteria workers, and everybody. I mean, this is the best, and that's what I was getting at earlier. That's why we have so many transfers that come in. It's why we don't have a problem with getting teachers that want to come into Sand Springs. Because we're the best.
Thank you. I would concur.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Call for a vote, please.
Mullins.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Hanlon.
Aye.
Noggle.
Aye. Don't anybody leave that's on the board. We have stuff to sign.